Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Ancient Epics, the place where the greatest stories of humanity come back to life. Long before stone temples rose above the forests of Europe, before chronicles were written and kings named themselves eternal, in the cold northern lands, where mist clung to reeds and water mirrored the sky like darkened glass, ancient hands lowered treasures into bogs and never returned for them. Swords sharper than any tool of daily life, cauldrons large enough to feed hundreds, finely worked shields, jewelry of gold and amber. Even the bodies of men and women placed gently into the wet embrace of peat and moss. These were not accidents, nor the careless losses of war or travel. They were deliberate acts, repeated over centuries, across vast distances, by cultures that shared no single language yet obeyed the same unspoken law. What was given to the bog was never meant to return. The bogs did not merely swallow these offerings. Skin darkened but unbroken, hair still clinging to skulls, fingerprints visible after 2,000 years. Iron that should have rusted into nothingness remained sharp, while flesh endured where bones sometimes did not. The landscape itself became a silent priest, guarding vows made to powers unseen. Each discovery has raised the same haunting question. What force inspired ancient Europeans to sacrifice their finest creations, and sometimes their own lives, to waters that had no face and no voice? To understand these ritual objects discovered in bogs, one must first understand the land. Across northern and western Europe, from Ireland to Denmark, from northern Germany to the lowlands of the Netherlands, vast peat bogs formed after the last ice age. As glaciers retreated, shallow lakes filled with plant life. Over centuries, layers of moss compressed into peat, creating waterlogged environments starved of oxygen. In such places, decay slowed to a whisper. Organic matter endured. To ancient communities, these landscapes appeared neither fully land nor fully water. They were thresholds, places where the ordinary rules of nature seemed suspended. For prehistoric and early historic Europeans, thresholds held power. Rivers marked boundaries between worlds. Forest clearings opened paths to the divine. And bogs, treacherous and seemingly bottomless, embodied the unknown. To step into a bog was to risk disappearance. To place something within, it was to offer that object to forces beyond human reach. Archaeological evidence shows that ritual deposition in bogs began as early as the Neolithic period and continued well into the Iron Age and early medieval centuries. This continuity reveals not a single belief system, but a shared understanding of sacred exchange. Among the most striking discoveries are weapons. In Denmark alone, entire battle assemblages have been recovered from bogs. Swords bent beyond use, spearheads snapped, shields deliberately broken. At sites such as Illerop Jadel and Nidham Moes, thousands of weapons were deposited together, often following large-scale conflicts. These were not hurried burials of the defeated. The weapons were carefully dismantled and arranged before being submerged. Victorious warriors appear to have offered the arms of their enemies to divine powers, thanking unseen forces for triumph and protection. The act of destroying weapons before deposition carried deep symbolism. A sword was more than iron. It embodied the strength, honor, and fate of its owner. By bending or breaking it, the weapon's earthly purpose was ended. Lowered into the bog, it crossed from the realm of men into the realm of spirits. Many swords bear elaborate decoration, twisted patterns of steel created through advanced forging techniques. Such craftsmanship required immense skill and resources, making these offerings all the more significant. What was given was valuable beyond measure. Cauldrons form another powerful category of bog discoveries. Massive bronze vessels, some imported from the Mediterranean world, have been found in northern European wetlands. The Gundestrup cauldron, discovered in a Danish bog in the late 19th century, stands as one of the most enigmatic ritual objects ever unearthed. Decorated with detailed scenes of gods, warriors, animals, and rites of transformation, it blends artistic traditions from across Europe. Its presence in a bog suggests not loss, but intention. Such a vessel, capable of serving entire communities, symbolized abundance, hospitality, and cosmic order. Jewelry and personal ornaments also appear frequently. Gold torques, arm rings, beads of amber gathered from distant shores, and finely crafted brooches were placed into bogs, often singly, sometimes in groups. These objects were worn close to the body and marked identity, status, and belonging. Their deposition hints at vows made in moments of crisis or gratitude. A failed harvest, a successful birth, the survival of winter, or the hope for fertility may have inspired such offerings. The bog received what the heart valued most. Yet the most unsettling discoveries are the human remains. Known today as bog bodies, these individuals were not simply victims of chance. Many show signs of ritual death. Strangulation, throat cutting, blows to the head, sometimes combined in what scholars describe as overkill. Some were carefully placed, eyes closed, limbs arranged. Others were pinned down with stakes or weighed with branches. Their last meals, preserved in their stomachs, often consisted of ritual foods, mixtures of grains and seeds that suggest ceremonial preparation. These people lived and died centuries ago, yet their faces remain hauntingly intact. Their preservation has allowed modern analysis to determine age, health, diet, and even the seasons in which they died. Many appear to have been young adults, physically healthy. In some cultures, such individuals may have been seen as ideal intermediaries between the human world and the divine. Ancient literary sources, written much later by Roman observers, offer fragmentary clues. Tacitus, writing in the 1st century CE, described northern European tribes who punished certain crimes by drowning victims in bogs, covering them with wicker hurdles. Other offenses were punished differently, suggesting that the bog held a specific moral and spiritual significance. They echo what archaeology reveals, that wetlands were places of judgment, sacrifice, and transition. The bog, therefore, was not merely a landscape feature. It was a sacred space shaped by belief, fear, and reverence. Objects placed within it were messages, offerings sent into a realm where gods, ancestors, or spirits were thought to dwell. The silence of the bog was not emptiness but presence. Its still waters reflected the sky, linking earth and heaven. Its depths concealed what was given, ensuring the offering remained untouched by human hands. As centuries passed, belief systems shifted and the old rites faded. Forests were cleared, fields drained, and bogs cut for peat, yet the land remembered. When spades struck deeper layers, ancient gifts emerged, darkened by time but not erased. Each discovery reopened a story left unfinished, whispering of rituals performed beneath open skies, of prayers spoken without words, and of a Europe whose sacred heart once beat in the wetlands. As the centuries turned and the rhythm of seasons governed every breath of ancient European life, the rituals bound to bogs grew deeper in meaning and more complex in form. These wetlands were not isolated places of fear alone. They were woven into the sacred calendar that guided agriculture, kingship, and the movement of the stars. The objects placed within them followed patterns that reveal an intimate knowledge of time itself, measured not by written numbers but by sun, moon, and shadow. Archaeological evidence suggests that many bog offerings were made during liminal moments of the year. The turning points of the solar cycle midwinter and midsummer held particular importance. At midwinter, when daylight weakened and the sun seemed near death, offerings sought renewal and protection. At midsummer, when light reached its peak, Gifts expressed gratitude and the desire for continued balance. Bogs, lying between land and water, mirrored these moments of transition. They became natural altars aligned not with stone walls, but with the heavens above. In several regions, wooden trackways have been discovered crossing bogs, constructed with remarkable engineering skill. These paths, some dating back to the Bronze Age, were not merely practical routes. Many ended abruptly in the wetlands' heart, far from settlements. Along these pathways, archaeologists have found deposits of tools, weapons, and ornaments. The act of walking into the bog along a constructed path, bearing an offering, carried ritual weight. Each step marked a movement away from the human world and toward the domain of the unseen. Trees played a central role in these ceremonies. Oak, ash, and alder were commonly used in trackways and ritual structures. Oak, associated with strength and endurance, was often chosen for votive constructions. Alder thrived in wet conditions and was seen as a guardian of watery realms. Wooden idols, roughly carved yet powerful in form, have been recovered from bogs in Germany and Scandinavia. These figures, sometimes with exaggerated eyes or limbs, suggest representations of deities or ancestral spirits. Their placement in waterlogged earth ensured permanence, a presence meant to endure beyond human memory. The careful selection of materials extended to metals. Bronze and iron were not treated equally. Bronze, with its warm glow and resistance to corrosion, often symbolized continuity and cosmic order. Iron, newly mastered during the Iron Age, represented strength, innovation, and danger. When iron weapons were sacrificed, their destruction neutralized their power before release. In contrast, bronze objects were often left intact, their surfaces darkening but their forms preserved as if awaiting future awakening. Some bog deposits reveal a striking connection to leadership and kingship. Regalia such as scepters, ornate belts, and ceremonial weapons appear among the offerings. In certain cultures, kings were believed to rule only as long as they maintained harmony between people, land, and gods. Failure could result in ritual removal. The bog, silent and impartial, became the place where a broken covenant was resolved. A ruler's death, followed by deposition, restored balance to the world. Though such practices cannot be proven universally, patterns across regions suggest shared ideals of sacred responsibility. The human remains discovered in bogs often support this interpretation. Some individuals wore fine clothing, capes woven with care, belts of decorated leather. Their hands showed little sign of labor, suggesting elevated status. Their deaths were deliberate, solemn, and bound to ceremony. In a world without written law codes, ritual sacrifice served as both justice and renewal. The bog accepted what society could no longer carry. Animal offerings further illuminate these beliefs. Horses, cattle, dogs, and even birds have been found in wetland deposits. Horses, associated with the sun and with divine messengers in many Indo-European traditions, were especially significant. Their sacrifice marked treaties, transitions, and appeals for fertility. The careful placement of animal remains alongside weapons and jewelry suggests a worldview where all forms of life participated in sacred exchange. Astronomy also left its quiet imprint on bog rituals. Alignments between certain wetland sites and celestial events have been proposed by researchers studying landscape archaeology. While not every claim holds certainty, some bogs appear positioned near sightlines to solstice sunrises or lunar extremes. The reflective surface of water amplified the sky, creating a mirrored cosmos. When offerings were lowered into the bog, they entered a realm where earth and heavens met, doubling the sacred act. Ancient European myths, preserved later in medieval literature, echo these themes. Stories of sacred wells, prophetic waters, and submerged treasures recur across Celtic and Germanic traditions. legendary swords drawn from lakes, cauldrons granting abundance, and heroes crossing watery boundaries all reflect memories of earlier practices. Though the written versions emerged long after pagan rites faded, their imagery preserved fragments of belief once enacted in silence. Roman conquest and Christianization gradually transformed these landscapes of meaning. Bogs were drained, forests cleared, and sacred places forgotten or deliberately suppressed. Yet even as churches rose, people continued to avoid certain wetlands, whispering of spirits and dangers. Folklore replaced ritual, but memory endured. The bog remained a place apart, respected and feared. When modern archaeology began to uncover these ancient offerings, a new chapter opened. Scientific methods revealed the chemistry behind preservation, but they could not strip away the sense of reverence. Each object lifted from peat carried the weight of intention. These were not discarded items, but carefully chosen gifts, offered with hope, fear, gratitude, or desperation. Museums today display swords darkened by centuries, faces of the dead serene and undisturbed, jewelry still gleaming beneath the stain of time. Yet their true power lies not in display cases, but in the story they tell together. They speak of a Europe deeply connected to land and sky, where survival depended on balance, and balance was maintained through ritual. The bog, patient and enduring, became both witness and guardian. It accepted what was given and held it fast, allowing the modern world to glimpse beliefs otherwise lost to silence. In its depths, the boundary between myth and history dissolves, revealing a sacred dialogue between humanity and nature that shaped ancient Europe for millennia. As the modern world slowly came to understand the meaning of ritual objects discovered in bogs, these silent wetlands emerged not merely as archaeological sites, but as archives of belief. Each preserved object, each carefully placed body, revealed how ancient Europeans understood existence itself. Life was not seen as a straight path from birth to death, but as a cycle bound to seasons, soil, and sky. The bog stood at the center of this worldview, a place where endings transformed into beginnings. The remarkable preservation of bog objects reshaped historical knowledge. Iron Age Europe, once imagined as fragmented and primitive, appeared instead as a network of cultures linked by shared rituals and sophisticated craftsmanship. Metallurgy revealed advanced forging techniques. Textile showed complex weaving patterns and dyes derived from plants and minerals. Even hairstyles and grooming habits survived, offering glimpses of personal identity long erased elsewhere. These were not nameless shadows of the past, but individuals shaped by culture, belief, and purpose. Scientific study deepened this understanding. Chemical analysis of peat revealed how sphagnum moss created acidic, oxygen-poor conditions that halted decay. Stable isotope analysis traced diets rich in grains, fish, or meat, reflecting regional variation and seasonal access. Pollen studies reconstructed ancient landscapes, showing forests of oak and birch surrounding wetlands once alive with ritual movement. The bog became a time capsule, preserving not only objects, but entire ecosystems bound to human life. Yet science alone could not explain why people returned to these places generation after generation. The answer lay in meaning. To ancient communities, the bog was alive. It breathed mist at dawn, swallowed footsteps, and reflected stars at night. It transformed what entered it, altering iron, skin, and wood into something timeless. Such power demanded respect. Rituals were not acts of superstition, but expressions of relationship between humanity and the forces governing survival. As belief systems changed, echoes of these practices endured in story and symbol. Medieval legends spoke of enchanted lakes guarding weapons of destiny. Folk tales warned travelers against wandering into marshes where the earth could claim them. Even place names preserved ancient reverence. marking wetlands as sacred, cursed, or forbidden. The bog never entirely lost its voice. In recent centuries, the rediscovery of these ritual deposits has raised profound ethical questions. How should human remains be treated? Are they scientific specimens, cultural ancestors, or sacred dead? Different nations have responded with care, balancing research with respect. Many bog bodies are reburied after study, returned to the earth that preserved them. Others remain displayed not as curiosities, but as ambassadors of ancient belief. These discoveries have also reshaped modern spiritual imagination. Without reviving ancient rites, many now recognize the deep wisdom in viewing landscapes as sacred. The bog teaches patience. It shows how memory can endure without monuments, how offerings made in silence can speak across millennia. In an age of speed and consumption, the bog stands as a reminder of restraint and reverence. The legacy of these ritual objects reaches beyond museums and textbooks. They challenge assumptions about progress and power. Ancient Europeans did not measure wealth solely by accumulation, but by the willingness to give away what mattered most. They understood that harmony required sacrifice, not destruction for its own sake, but deliberate release into a larger order. The bog also reveals a profound humility before nature. No walls enclosed it. No statues dominated it. It could not be controlled, only approached with caution and respect. Rituals performed their acknowledged forces beyond human command. In doing so, they reinforced social bonds, moral codes, and shared identity. Communities survived because belief provided structure and meaning. As climate change and environmental loss threaten modern landscapes, the ancient relationship with wetlands gains new relevance. Bogs, once drained and dismissed, are now recognized as vital ecosystems that store carbon and support biodiversity. Protecting them honors not only nature, but the long human history entwined within their depths. The past and future meet once more in these quiet places. The story of ritual objects discovered in bogs is ultimately a story of continuity. Though languages vanished and gods were forgotten, the human impulse to seek connection with the unseen endures. The bog preserved that impulse with unparalleled fidelity. Each sword, cauldron, ornament, and body remains a testament to belief enacted through care, intention, and sacrifice. In the stillness of preserved peat, ancient Europe speaks without words. It tells of communities gathered at the edge of water, of offerings lowered with solemn hands, of prayers entrusted to earth and sky. These were not acts of fear alone, but of hope. Hope that the world would remain balanced, that seasons would turn, and that life would continue. Through these discoveries, the modern age is granted a rare gift, the chance to listen. To understand that history is not only written in stone and parchment, but in water, soil, and silence. The bog, once seen as empty and dangerous, emerges as one of humanity's most faithful storytellers. If these ancient voices touched your heart today, please consider subscribing to Ancient Epics and ringing the bell so you never miss the next forgotten tale. Thanks for watching.